good morning dear students. This is your English teacher Benu Sairawat and I once again welcome you all to RKP online classes. Alright, I hope you all are doing well at your place. Alright, so today I am here with a beautiful poem called The Squirrel. This poem has been written by Mildred Bowers Armstrong. Alright, Mildred Bowers Armstrong, who was an American writer, right, who was born in 1901 and died in 1984. Now, the most amazing thing about this writer is that she always brought life in her writings. Yes, so when you read her poems, right, you will feel as if the whole scenario, the whole thing has come alive in front of your eyes. That is the beauty in her poems, right? And the same thing you will be able to enjoy in this poem, that is The Squirrel. Right? Now, we all have seen squirrels in our life at some point of time. Yes, you may have seen it in parks or in the garden at your home, right? They just keep playing around the trees and they are very cute. They are adorable. Don't you think so? Yes. Now, before we start the poem, I would like to tell you something which is very interesting. And you know what is that? I have brought 4 interesting facts about the squirrels. Yes, I'm serious, and which are not in the poem, right? So it makes it even more interesting. Don't you think so? I will not tell you about all the interesting facts now. There are 4 in number, right? And 1 I will tell now, 2nd after some time, 3rd afterwards, and 4th at the end. Alright? So, if you want to know all about the squirrels, please stay tuned and do not leave the video in between, right? Very good. Now, all of you, please open your books at page number 17. So, I hope you all have a pencil in your hand so that whatever you find interesting or important, worth noting down, right? So, you can always do that. Alright? Okay. Now, let's start it. Once I will just read it out and then I'll explain it. He wore a question mark for tail, an overcoat of grey. He sat up straight to eat a nut. He liked to tease and play. And if we ran around his tree, he went the other way. Alright. It's so cute and it's so interesting, very easy to understand as well, right? And why? Because we all have seen it. So, we can, we are familiar to this thing. Alright. So now, in the first line, the poet says, he wore a question mark for tail and an overcoat of grey. Is that possible? Can a squirrel wear a question mark on his tail and an overcoat of grey? What does that mean? Can any of you imagine the reason behind that? Well, I hope, I know my students are really smart and they can go up to that extent of imagination. Alright, so let me tell you, when he says he wore a question mark for tail, now in your books, just notice the picture of the squirrel and you'll see, notice the tail. Specifically, notice the tail. And do you see the shape of the tail? It's actually, it looks like as if somebody has, written a question mark there. Somebody has put a question mark there, right? Do you see that? Wonderful. So that is why the poet says he wore a question mark for tail and an overcoat of grey. Now overcoat is what? What we wear, right? And it actually covers more than half of our body, right? So when he talks about overcoat of grey, it actually means the skin of the squirrel, right? So he calls the squirrel's skin as overcoat of grey color, right? Okay, and one more thing, you must have noticed that the poet has used he for it instead of it or this. Now why? There are two reasons for that. If an animal or a bird or an insect is the main character in the poem or a story or a lesson, then we use the other pronouns for that. We may use he or she for that. And the second reason is, when we talk about the animal or the bird lovingly, with affection, with love, then also we can use other pronouns instead of it or this. Alright, now we come to the fourth line now. He sat up straight to eat a nut. And you may have noticed, like, whenever I think of a squirrel, it's the picture that comes into my mind is always as if he's sitting and eating the nut. Yes, so when he eats the nut, he always sits straight. Yes, and now the time for the first interesting fact. Alright, now as he's talking about his eating habits, so I would like to tell you here that a squirrel's front teeth, okay, a squirrel's front teeth never ever stop growing. Can you believe that? I know it's hard to believe, but it's 100% true. Alright, so I hope you found it interesting, and I have 3 more interesting facts which I will share with you after a while. Okay? Now, so he liked to tease and play. Now, when the squirrel is in the garden, he always likes to tease and play. He always plays and he always teases. Teases is what? When you irritate someone, but in a funny way, right? So when you play with your friends, right, or your cousins, you tease each other, right? So the same way, right? And if we ran around his tree, you may have noticed it that it always runs around the trees, right? It runs around the trees. And have you ever played with him? Well, I have done that. Yes, I have done that. And so if you chase him, chase is to follow someone, right? If you go to chase him, it will, if you are chasing it from this way, this is the tree, and if you go this way and it's coming from this side, the moment it looks at you, it will go back and run away. Yes. And now it's time to share next 2 interesting facts about the squirrels. So when a predator is, chasing a squirrel, predator is what? Somebody who wants to eat the squirrel, right? So when predators are, following it, to escape from them, they run in zigzag motion. Yes, zigzag. Now why? Because it's helpful, it's when you are running in a zigzag movement, it's not very easy to, catch something. Smart trick, right? And the next fact about the squirrels is, sometimes squirrels, they just collect their food, right? They collect their food. But if they see that somebody is around who wants to snatch its food, you know what it does actually? The squirrel pretends to dig the soil. She digs it up and then covers it up. But actually, he does not put his food inside the soil. So basically, he just befools the predator, right? So the squirrels, they are brilliant. They are so brainy, I must say. Yes? Alright. Now, I hope you all loved this poem. A very simple poem, right? A very simple poem. Now, we'll talk about its rhyming scheme here. Rhyming scheme is basically the pattern in which a poem has been written, right? Alright. So, you have to keep this thing in your mind, beta. Whenever we find out the rhyming scheme, we always focus on the last word of the line. Okay, so now you can see here, I have written the last words of all the lines, right? Okay, now I hope you know what are rhyming words. Rhyming words are those words which have similar sound. All right. For example, if I say flood, okay, this is flood. Its rhyming word can be blood, blood, flood. All right. Or I can say chief, thief. All right. You see, its last sound is absolutely similar, right? So that is called rhyming sounds, right? Now, the first line is always marked as letter A, all right? So the first word is tail, so we'll take it as A. Now, if the second word, I mean in the second line, the last word, if the last word in the second line rhymes with it, if it rhymes with the first line, then it will be A only. But does the word tail rhyme with it? No, it does not. Okay, so we'll take it as B. Now let's go to the third one. Nut. Nut. This word neither rhymes with it, the first one, nor with the second one. So we'll mark it as C. Okay. Now, next is play. Play, tail, no rhyming. Play, gray, yes, it rhymes. Yes. So because it rhymes with it, so it will also be B. Okay. Now the next one is tree. Tree does not rhyme with any of the words written above, right? So it will be D. We have already used A, B and C. Now next will be D, right? Now next, the last line, the last word of the last line is way. Now way rhymes with gray and play. So it will be B. Alright. So here we get the rhyming scheme of the poem, and that is A, B, C, B, D and B. Alright? And now comes the last interesting fact about the squirrel. You know, today, if we have so many trees around, a little credit goes to these tiny creatures as well. How? Because sometimes when the squirrels, they collect their food and they bury it somewhere, right? They bury it somewhere in the soil so that they can eat it later, right? But then they forget about it and they don't collect it back, right? So that seed had been buried by the squirrel in the soil, that becomes a tree later on. Yes, how beautiful is that? So I hope students, you loved this poem, you enjoyed it. If you have any doubt, please do not hesitate and do ask me. Thank you so much. Stay safe.